Okay. Well, that's all the preliminaries out of the way. You guys ready to do a show?
Let's do it.
Try.
What do we want? Stick a vote. Listener hate mail first or news stories first?
The news is more boring.
Yeah.
Do your listener
If
mail.
you got some hate mail, go for it.
All right. Well, let's just jump right into this tedious old topic.
Uh-oh.
It sounds like you think, I'm wondering, it sounds like you think someone advocating for men's rights must think women should have fewer rights than men, or that discrimination against women doesn't happen. That's not a rhetorical question. I'm wondering where you're coming from, what you see that I don't. Okay. Here, do I explain this?
I'm not sure I can parse that. What does it mean?
He thinks that, from what we've said before on the men's rights movement issue, that what we're claiming, he thinks what we're claiming is that men's rights advocates think women should have fewer rights than men. Which is kind of, I think that is the effect of their behavior. I don't know what they think. I'll take their word for what they think. People can be mistaken, think one thing, and their actions could lead to a different consequence.
Yes.
It's the consequence that we're talking about, and I'll get to explaining that to him in a moment. And he also surmises that we're claiming that men think discrimination against women doesn't happen. No, we absolutely don't think that. That we think men's rights advocates are claiming that discrimination against women doesn't happen. No, that's not it. Here, let me just go over the math one more time, okay? So since we're all in agreement that discrimination against women does happen.
Yes.
And almost everyone I've talked to on this issue, on both sides of the issue, agrees that there is in the world some more discrimination against women than there is against men. Okay, most people agree with that. They'll quibble about how much it is. They will agree, yes. But what men's rights advocates like to do is say that's not the issue. The issue is each and every little nitpicky point on which one side or the other has an advantage. And we men have identified some number of things where we think we're getting the short end of the stick. And what we do is we work on trying to improve the position of men on those issues, which would seem fair and reasonable, except for one thing, okay? The math. Let's say that compared to women, men score a 2 on a scale of overall rights in the world, and women score a 1.8. Okay? I'm making these numbers up. It's not important what the numbers precisely are. It's the relationships between these numbers I'm trying to talk about, right? Now, if you're on the side that's already scoring a 2 overall in the big picture, and you start going around hunting for places where you're on those individual issues, your score is, well, maybe you only have a 1.7, maybe you have a 1.6 on some individual issue, and you work on improving your position on those. What happens to the overall number? If you are successful at improving men's rights on those individual issues, you're pushing the men's score up above 2 to like 2.1, 2.3, right? Without moving women at all, which has the net effect of making things even yet better for men without helping women at all, and in relation to men, women suffering more.
They're getting worse, yeah.
Right? Because at least women used to have those few issues where they were doing well compared to you, and you're taking that away. Okay? I'm concerned about the big picture. I think that the time to get all up in arms about individual issues where you think you're not doing as well is when you're not already in the vastly advantageous position overall. And if you choose to focus your efforts on making your advantageous position even better by focusing on those individual points, the net effect is you are trying to make the world a place where women have even fewer rights than men than they have right now, and that, and whether you agree that discrimination against women happens or not, you're not helping.
I think the perspective that you just expressed is interesting. I never really heard it expressed that way before, but one thing that I thought about as you were giving that example is how that really relates to any sort of situation where one group is far better off. So when you were describing that, I was thinking, oh, that's probably why people get so bent when you hear people talking about white rights or something, people that are reverse discrimination.
Yeah.
And you hear that and it just grates, and you just think to yourself, oh, come on, be real. But at the same time, that helps, I think, kind of describe why people have that recoil. Why there's that recoil. It's
right. That's what's fundamentally wrong with the group in the advantageous position whining about its rights.
Well, one thing I always found really weird.
It's not that you can't make a case on individual issues that there's imbalances. You can.
Right.
But if you are ignoring the big picture in order to focus on those individual cases, you're ignoring the big picture. And if you're ignoring the big picture, you're not paying attention, and you're not really caring about the way things are overall. It's not like it's a tricky, because I wouldn't want to say that because William is a man, that if William is discriminated against for being a man, he absolutely has to shut up and take it, right? I'm not quite saying that.
Of course not.
I am saying that any kind of big movement that is organized for him does look inappropriate in exactly the way I've described.
I find that for me, it kind of strikes me a little bit as sort of a punitive response as opposed to a legitimate movement. So and the framing to me, when I observe the arguments, and I think I observe them more than engage them, and the framing is always very weird to me, because you'll have an issue that is for example, there was I started on my Facebook wall one time a thread where I found this article about male rape victims and some of the issues that they have to deal with, and I thought that was an important thing to share. So I share it on my wall, and within the first couple of comments, somebody posts, "Did you know that if you rape a woman and she's drunk, or you have sex with a woman and she's drunk, that it's automatically rape?" And from there, the thread just devolved into men and women arguing, and and the thing that killed me the most, though, wasn't watching the asinine debate that occurred, on the thread. It was the fact that nobody was talking about the male rape victims. I'm like, wow, here was this issue that was a legitimate issue where men have this really, unique perspective of how this is going to affect them. It's a different thing. It's not, I'm sure they have different social pressures, different social situations, and, mental
different
mindsets.
Expectations.
Correct. And there's a lot to be examined here. And just because you don't hear about it much doesn't mean that it's almost like with men who get breast cancer. It's geared toward such a women's issue that you wonder sometimes, do they feel marginalized, and should we not sometimes just sort of consider that it's something that does also, even in a small way, affect men, that we should sort of look at it like the victims of breast cancer or the victims of rape. And so I tend to try to look at it that way. And I say, but you have to look at the different demographics, because a rape victim that is male is probably going to have a different response or a different reaction and require different types of intervention than a female. And so I understand that there's these social constructs that these two people have been living in, that this action and this violation is going to affect them in different ways. And I think that both of those are important things for society to understand, and we need to not ignore that just because this group might not be the most visible, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be looked at as something important as well. And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm trying to devote a little bit of space to this, and I can't even get a productive discussion on my wall going, because people want to argue about men and women.